America, my name is Osei-Frimpong. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the Mississippi Miracle. And the Mississippi Miracle refers to the way in which Mississippi went from 47th in reading to 16th in reading based on a change in education culture and tools without necessarily a change in education dollars. And this is important because often we confuse what works in education we conflate that with money. We assume that the more dollars we spend, the better the education system will be. But actually, dollars are best spent defending against bad culture. And if you can change the culture directly, you don't even have to change the dollars. And this should be clear when you just think about, say, something like a marriage, right? So would you rather make $300,000 a year and be married to someone who's bad at being a partner and a parent to your children? Or would you rather make $50,000 a year and be married to someone who's good at being a partner and good at being a partner to you and a co-parent with your children, right? If you think the $300,000 a year somehow makes up with the bad culture that you put into your house, you are ignorant. And it's okay, I'm here to disabuse you of your ignorance. If you actually think about the situation, you would know that you don't need the money, you need the culture. And insofar as you have the money is to defend you from bad culture. Trust me, unless you are incompetent in a profound way, you want the $50,000 a year and a person who's very good at being a partner and a parent, rather than the $300,000 a year and the person with a deficient sense of partnership and parenting, and is going to screw up your kids. And since they're in the house, you're going to screw up the kids in ways that you can't actually defend against, right? So money doesn't solve cultural problems. Money is what may offer a defense against culture. And people ask, Ivan, when you say culture all this time, what do you mean? Culture is what allows you or enables you or tells you how to turn freedom into meaning, right? Our institutions, marriage, parenthood, jobs, what to do in civil society, political institutions, none of those are instinctual. None of those are natural. All of them require reflection on what is good. And culture is what allows you to reflect and transmit what is good. If these things were natural, then we wouldn't need culture. You don't have to teach a rock to fall. It falls by nature. So the problem is a lot of our nature gets kind of implicated in a culture that's not great, and we actually have natural impulses to do things that aren't good, right? So culture is how we turn freedom into meaning, is how we turn our free actions into memorable ones that are actually worthwhile. So we do that through culture, and we transmit it through culture. So we need cultural institutions to tell us what counts for a good education and how we should administer it. And money won't answer all of those questions in the same way that money won't always tell you how to be a good spouse, and it won't tell you how to be a good parent. There are a number of wealthy parents who screw up their kids because they think money will solve all of their problems when they actually just needed culture. And the number of good parents who actually don't have a lot of money but have culture. A lot of educators are like this. They do pretty well by their kids because two educators will have a decent culture even if they don't have a lot of money. And it turns out that they raise pretty good kids that way. So culture is what tells you how to turn your freedom into meaning. And education has a bad culture shot through by a bunch of liberals, and liberals are always kind of market-based and a little bit lazy, and they sell laziness. By the way, liberals will sell laziness. Liberals say that you don't have to be a parent. Kids will raise themselves naturally if you just do what's fun. Liberals will tell you to give your kids graphic novels instead of chapter books because chapter books are hard and kids should be able to do what they want to do. Liberals will tell you that it's a quasi-market-based ideology. So they'll always just sell laziness. They'll sell you the easiest road. And you want to buy it because it's easy. And raising kids well is hard. It's not easy. You got to spend a lot of time with some frustrating beings whom you happen to love but are also frustrated by. And they'll sell education tech. This app will teach your kid, whatever. No, the app will not teach you. You need to teach your kid what to do and how to do it. You need to monitor them intensely, and There's no shortcut. There's no shortcut. So the Mississippi Miracle is a cultural revolution in which the state of education from the state level to the classroom says we're no longer just passing kids who can't read past third grade. If they can't pass third grade, there's a gate. We keep them. No more social promotion on to fourth grade. So we're not going to pass you unless you can actually do fourth grade work, which is a way. It's a way. I want to incentivize parents to just take a better, a more culturally appropriate role in their kids' education. Right now, parents think that if they just go out and take that second shift and earn more money and work from 3 to 11 or whatever, they don't have to actually work with their kids. They can just have money and then send their kids to school, and the school will do all the work. I'm saying that no, actually we need parents who actually know how to work with their kids. And so we need to pay parents for the kids' test scores. And so now parents will be culturally incentivized, materially incentivized to not take that second shift from 3 to 11, but instead sit down and teach your kid how to read, because they'll get paid, $10,000, $15,000 at the end of the year if the kid passes a grade level proficiency test. Right? So I think getting parents more involved and changing the incentives around what constitutes good parenting is the cultural tack that will take even states like Mississippi. And Mississippi is important because it's got a lot of poor black people and not a great infrastructure. So if you can do it in Mississippi, you can literally do it in anywhere. And if you can do it in Mississippi, you can do it. It's actually possible. It's actually possible if you just kick out all of the liberal white women who told you to do whole words and not do sight reading, and to do sight words instead of teaching kids phonics. And they said, any reading matters, is even if it's graphic novels. No, you need your kids in chapter books as soon as possible and consistently, and understanding that this is books and you need to take the screens away. Kids don't need screens at all. So you change these cultural things, you're not going to have to pay for expensive rehabilitation. And a lot of these cultural things are cheaper. Like, it's cheaper not to have screens. Right? It's funny. Bad cultural tics are so deeply imbued in American culture. I ran into an educator, professional educator, whose daughter couldn't read, and she was surprised that her daughter couldn't read because she did what they did in The Color Purple, where, they put signs on all the things, and then she thought that if I put signs on all the things, this is a person who's actually an educator. She thought, if I put signs on all the things, then my kids will just kind of read through osmosis. No, you need to sit down and sound things out with your kid. Like, you need a system. And so she was surprised that her kid couldn't read, because she was like, I did what they said in Color Purple. Surely it will work. No, it turns out it doesn't work. It turns out that you are part of a deficient culture and you didn't know the work you had to put in. You just watched a movie that I don't like on other grounds, but it turns out that it doesn't work like that, right? So the Mississippi Miracle was a cultural change that did not start or end in increased funding, but came through just throwing out bad educational practices, right? It came through bad education, throwing out bad educational practices, right? And I said before, what's the most fascinating bit about it is that the campaign found a way to pull this off from state to the implementation at the classroom level without a lobby. I mean, it had a lobby without big money behind a lobby. So somehow it took over the cultural institutions and the media institutions and became persuasive without money. Because mostly what you give me, you don't give me money so that I become more persuasive. You give me money so I can reach a bigger audience, right? So the right ideas, if they're hidden, it doesn't really matter. So the money buys the audience. It doesn't necessarily buy the persuasive appeal. I mean, I can get glossier stuff if you give me a ton of money. If you go to www.funkyacademic.com, I can get glossier stuff, and I'd love to hire an editor to put up clips and do all of that. But you pretty much, you don't give me money to inform my content. You give me money so that my content can be better disseminated. And yet somehow this campaign worked in Mississippi. It disseminated the truth in a persuasive way that changed policy without a huge money campaign that I have heard of. It's just like the truth went out. Like somehow the sense that obviously it's bad to have screens in schools. Obviously it's good to have phonics as opposed to whole word education. These things are clear to me. These things are clear to me, and they should be clear to you, except it means that parents have to do more work. So parents don't want to hear that. Small class sizes are better than bigger class sizes. These things are clear. You shouldn't need like that much data to convince you of that. The problem is that is going to require more of you, so you don't want to hear it. So somehow these countercultural reforms were passed in Mississippi, probably because everyone gave up on Mississippi, or it was so low at the bottom that they didn't have any pride keeping the culture destitute, right? So Mississippi was 47th in the nation. And, if they were 30th in the nation, they might have had pride, and pride keeps people doing stupid things. And since they probably figured they have nothing to lose, we're already 47. Let's try this thing where we actually teach kids how to read in using phonics. Let's try this thing where we actually hold kids who can't do fourth grade work back and keep them in third grade. And it turns out it worked. And now they are actually seeing a decrease in retention numbers in terms of kids they have to retain in third grade, because the culture is changing. So now people are coming into third grade prepared because they know that, one, you mean business. If you can't do this test, then you can't go to fourth grade. And also they're just, it's a deeper expectation that people will be able to do the work and not just be socially promoted. So they succeeded in expressing a miracle without changing money, without raising taxes, but just by implementing better strategies. How they popularized it, how they got the policy changed, that's going to be a fascinating story, because usually you need money to buy the politicians to get the policy change. But if you use money to buy the politician, then some ed tech company is also going to throw around money and buy those same politicians. So somehow they had a group of politicians that were inured to all of the money that's paying for bad systems. Like running education in a horrible way is very profitable, especially for a state that nobody actually believes that your kids can be educated anyway. So it took a quality of belief in truth of phonics, in truth of holding kids back, to actually pull off this miracle of going from 47th to 16th in a state shot through with poor black kids. So I think this Mississippi miracle is like, it says the limits of money. It says the limits of money. And I will reiterate the thought experiment I posed at the beginning. If you think money solves all of your institutional problems, all of your educational problems, all of your cultural problems, you would probably take $300,000 a year being married to a bad spouse who is culturally deficient, while that same spouse is raising your kids, is helping you raise your kids, rather than $50,000 a year with a good spouse who is actually culturally top-notch. I think if you're smart, and you can fix this in the comments. Tell me in the comments. If you're smart, you'll take the $50,000 a year with a spouse who like gets it, and is culturally on point. Because in America, you can make that work. You can find a place. You're not going to make it work in San Francisco necessarily, but you can make that work in other places if you don't have to play defense against like bad culture. Like you can do it. You can do it. Now, $300,000 a year, if you have $300,000 a year coming in, but you're married to someone with a bad culture, that money is going to go places you don't want it to go. It's going to go to all these rehabs. You're still not going to be able to control what you need to control. And Like could go to all the fancy schools, but then you end up raising a snob. But since you have a bad culture, you're not going to have this cultural skills to deal with a snob. And so then your kid's going to be like this brat who now you can't deal with and your partner can't deal with because your partner's got a bad culture. And parenting is very hard. So Aldrich Hopoi says, show me the money, they'll take the bag. No, you don't want the bag when kids are involved and when the marriage is involved. Because if you take the $300,000 a year married to someone who's with a deficient culture, they're going to stress you out in ways and screw up your kids in ways that money cannot remediate. Money cannot remediate. You only need enough to keep away from bad culture. But Edric DeHoy says they can take the bad culture and the money. And I'm saying that you'll end up spending all of that money dealing with the disease that you've brought into your house. So I'm just saying you could hash it out in the comments. And if you appreciate what I'm doing, you should go to www.funkyacademic.com because I'm trying to raise the quality of culture in your household and help you not make the quality of mistakes that I see especially too many black people make, chasing the bag and not taking culture appropriately seriously. And what it takes to actually raise kids, right? So like culture, a defective culture is going to tell you that the app will raise your kids, that it's okay that they're on the smartphone all the time. It's okay that they're scrolling TikTok. It's okay that they're reading graphic novels. It's okay that they're learning how to read through sight words as opposed to phonetics. None of that is okay. None of that is okay. You'll raise a kid who's deficient in ways that you can't even imagine. But liberal market-based culture will sell you laziness. It will sell you that you can have all of these good things without doing any work. You don't have to raise your kid. You don't have to read with them. You don't have to make sure. You don't have to get on them. You don't have to fight with them. You don't have to make them do things they don't want to do. Liberal culture will tell you that. And it will sell the teachers that and the schools that if you don't watch it. So the fact that Mississippi fought against that culture and actually instituted hard reforms to make kids actually do work that they're not necessarily wanting to do is a fascinating truth. And black people, this is a truth that we need to take seriously because we need to figure out what we can do without money because we don't have a ton of money. And I'm saying there are things we can do without money. And also we need to understand that a lot of whites vote for culture because, especially poor whites, they don't have money. And so they need a government culture that will support their point of view because they don't have the private money for to afford the defense against like the deficient and malicious culture, right? So like a lot of the anti-trans stuff comes from poor white people who just don't want to have to deal with schools marketing what they consider to be a deviant lifestyle to their children. They don't have the money to go to private school. They don't have money to go to Catholic school. So they need their public schools to actually have a decent culture. And the only way they're going to get that is through voting in the people they vote in, right? So they use their votes for cultural control because they don't have the money for the cultural prophylactic that money often provides, right? If you can change the culture directly, you don't need money because what you usually use that money for is cultural defense anyway. Like if you have good public schools, you don't have to buy your private school. Does that make sense? Is that clear? So the goal is changing culture, and the means isn't necessarily through more funding. You could rearrange funding. Like I said, the first state that figures out a way to pay parents for their kids' test scores is gonna blow it up, because that's the last thing that needs to be. We need to disabuse ourselves of. We need to disabuse ourselves of the notion that our schools can teach every kid regardless of the family environment that the kid comes from. We need to actually try to create better family environments. Our schools are set for a certain sort of family environments. And if you come from that certain sort of family environment, the school multiplies. But the school is only a multiplier. It doesn't, We're not talking loaves. I guess we are talking loaves and fishes. We're not talking turning something into nothing, nothing into something. It'll multiply. So if you give it 3, it'll root that. I mean, it'll square that, right? You'll end up with 9. But if you give it 0, you'll end up with 0. So actually, that's 1, right? So anyway, you have to think of schools as a multiplier, and ultimately, like I said, the first school that figures out that we need to restructure the incentives of parents so that parents aren't incentivized to necessarily make more money, but they're incentivized instead to pay attention to their kid directly at home. That's going to be the first state that actually like blows it up. They're going to go from 48th to 3rd because now parents are on the same page as the school. And the only way you're going to get parents on the same page as a school is paying the parents to be on the same page as school. Because right now, the culture tells them that the best way they can be the best parent they can is by making more money. And that's just not necessarily true. That's just not necessarily true. Mississippi got rid of social promotion. Mississippi brought back phonics, got rid of some of the junk science around reading. And it turns out that they then took they took out California and all these other schools. And this is how immigrants work, right? This is how you can come to the United States at the bottom and in a few years be at the top. The same way Mississippi did it, by having the right culture and tuning out the noise. You could go from 46th to 16th, not by adding more money, but by tuning out the noise and coming with a good culture. And that's what I'm trying to tell. And that's black people. We need to pay attention to this because we need to do all the things that we can do without money in order to create the culture and the power to actually get, money and stabilize it. Right? Because if you do these things without money, it's going to be hard to stabilize because someone will then enough people are going to be liable to bribery. So you make the cultural shift, but you need to also make the economic one so that people aren't liable to black side and be bribed. And they're doing something that's not good. All right. So thank you for your time. If you appreciate what I'm doing, go to www.funkyacademic.com. I want you to understand Mississippi as a story of how you succeed without money. And take that and you do it through culture. And you can beat everybody with money. You can beat the kids with money if you have a superior culture. So thank you for your time, and I will talk to you at another time. Peace. I'm going to do a show on direct education. About like the one-on-one instruction that's required and actually to win.